Dinar Shift. The attention of a global community, composed of those who have held a prolonged, steadfast interest in the economic future of Iraq, now focuses on a period of intense activity that suggests a monumental shift may be underway. For years, countless individuals across the world have anchored their conviction to the belief in a dramatic financial resurgence for the Iraqi nation, envisioning a comprehensive overhaul of its monetary standing. They have weathered persistent currents of doubt and skepticism, enduring dismissive commentary from those who question the very possibility of such a large-scale coordinated economic restructuring. This long-held belief has been sustained through a gauntlet of global geopolitical events, volatile market fluctuations, significant alterations in central bank policies, and extended periods of profound, unsettling silence from official channels. This collective persistence, refined by years of patient observation, is now meeting a crescendo of unprecedented, focused attention. What had long been relegated to the sphere of theoretical speculation or quiet, persistent rumors now manifests with a palpable intensity that demands serious consideration. The core narrative surrounding Iraq's potential monetary evolution has fundamentally shifted. The energy driving these discussions is markedly different, and what was once viewed merely as hearsay is now resonating with a clarity that forces analysts and observers alike to pay close heed. This current juncture, which has been described in certain circles as the activation of a revaluation RV Phase 2, is signaling a dramatically quickened tempo in the ongoing dialogue among international financial authorities. The recent widespread discussion regarding a purported 36-hour exchange window for a specific group, often referred to as Tier 4 billions, has consequently pushed the level of global anticipation regarding these developments to its zenith, marking an extraordinary moment for those who have meticulously tracked the incremental signs accumulating over multiple years. This juncture is not merely a recurrence of past speculation or a false alarm, rather it is presented within the community as an inflection point for those who have dedicated themselves to watching the methodical, sequential accumulation of preparatory actions, patiently awaiting the long-promised breakthrough. Within the last decade, the global financial ecosystem has navigated one of the most dynamic epochs of structural and technological evolution in its recorded history. Major central banks, powerful international regulatory organizations, and the expansive digital payment networks that facilitate trillions in daily transactions have all been engaged in a quiet, rigorous retooling of the foundational principles governing monetary policy. This systemic overhaul is explicitly designed to adapt to the rapidly transforming environment of global commerce. The emergence of sophisticated digital settlement technologies and the complex reality of evolving geopolitical alignments and trade relationships that characterize the modern world. Throughout Asia, the Middle East, across Europe, and within the Americas, numerous nations have been diligently implementing their own versions of profound financial modernization reforms. While many of these intricate changes often remain entirely opaque and invisible to the average citizen, their structural significance for large-scale financial institutions, sovereign wealth managers, and central banking operations is immense and undeniable. These pervasive global reforms encompass a variety of critical advancements, including the widespread adoption of instant settlement networks, the carefully managed expansion of new digital platforms explicitly backed by tangible assets, and the implementation of dramatically increased transparency requirements across all levels of finance. These new rules are meticulously designed to preempt market manipulation, enhance systemic trust, and bolster the stability of the entire global economic structure against potential future shocks or disruptions. Iraq, despite the considerable turbulence and immense challenges of its recent history, has been consistently and determinedly aligning its own financial mechanisms with this dominant global trend. The nation has worked exhaustively to restore its banking credibility, fortify its monetary sovereignty against external pressures, and execute a comprehensive modernization of its foundational banking infrastructure. Therefore, the initiation of what is often collectively labeled as large-scale global revaluation activity is viewed not as an isolated event, but as a crucial milestone embedded within this much broader, worldwide wave of financial reform and standardization. The exceptional importance of the current moment is derived not solely from the specific, individual actions taken by Iraq, but rather from the compelling evidence of wide-reaching synchronization among multiple international financial systems, all methodically striving toward the shared goal of improved global economic stability and systemic resilience. While the exact nature and interpretation of these events continue to vary significantly across different investor communities and speculative groups, there is a widespread consensus among independent financial analysts Experts generally agree that the current heightened phase of activity is reflective of a far deeper, more pervasive global movement that aims to improve liquidity mechanisms across all major markets and establish a greater, more accurate alignment of currency valuations with the genuine, verifiable economic potential inherent in key emerging markets. The intricate and often confusing terminology of tiers, frequently referenced in discussions of global financial transitions, is often a source of great complexity for newcomers to this specialized field. However, this tiered structure is merely based on the standard established practice used by governments and central banks when implementing any large-scale monetary, regulatory, or technological rollout, ensuring an orderly transition. In the context of international finance, the utilization of staged implementation models represents a critical tool that allows central banks, in close partnership with associated financial institutions, to introduce monumental reforms in a gradual and carefully managed manner. This disciplined approach is paramount because it ensures that systemic stability is rigorously maintained throughout the entirety of the financial system during the transition period. The structure typically prioritizes higher tiers, which commonly involve major governmental entities, sovereign wealth funds, and the most significant institutional players, moving on to subsequent stages that progressively incorporate commercial banks, large corporate participants, and ultimately private individuals who operate under clearly defined, structured regulatory frameworks. This methodical rollout prevents chaos and allows for real-time adjustments to be made without risking global instability. Within the specific discourse surrounding currency revaluation, the term Tier 4 billions is frequently used to designate the phase that specifically involves pre-registered private holders of certain foreign currencies. These are the individuals who have proactively prepared all necessary documentation, meticulously following and complying with formal, pre-established exchange protocols and regulatory requirements. While the precise operational specifics of this phase are naturally subject to variation, depending on the particular jurisdiction, regulatory bodies, and the participating financial institutions, the core concept remains consistent. This phase is reserved for private citizens who have maintained a state of readiness to formally engage with the system the moment the required activation occurs. The true significance of this phase is not the associated speculative excitement, but the fact that it represents a carefully timed and controlled component of a much larger and more complex monetary engineering exercise designed for maximum stability. The careful coordination inherent in this tiered structure ensures that any new liquidity introduced into the financial system is managed in a highly systematic and controlled fashion, rather than being injected abruptly or chaotically, which would invariably destabilize markets. This multi-phased approach is fundamentally a mirror image of similar long-established strategies routinely employed by central banks across the world during major currency redenominations, significant interest rate adjustments, or the large-scale migration to new digital banking platforms. Understanding this inherent structural sequence is crucial because it helps to clarify precisely why certain pivotal events unfold sequentially in a structured order, rather than as a sudden, spontaneous, and overwhelming simultaneous change. This entire framework is a tangible reflection of the core principle of systemic integrity, which ultimately guides all major global financial operations and decision-making processes, placing stability above all else. During periods that involve the fundamental recalibration of a major financial system, it is a well-established and necessary practice for all central banks, major digital clearinghouses, and international regulatory authorities to execute critical operations within restricted, highly structured activation windows. The explicit purpose of these narrowly defined windows is to grant technical teams the necessary time to rigorously synchronize enormous databases, internally verify complex ledger records, coordinate crucial currency rate adjustments simultaneously across multiple jurisdictions, and absolutely guarantee that every single participating financial institution is in perfect technical alignment before broader public operations can safely resume. The currently discussed 36-hour transition window, which many analysts associate with the progression of global revaluation activity, is presented as a prime example of this meticulous, technically driven approach to sophisticated liquidity management. It is critical to understand that windows of this type are not intended as broad public announcements or consumer-facing events. Instead, they function as quietly executed technical intervals during which the high-level financial infrastructure, the very plumbing of the global system, undergoes final validation and stress testing. By operating under such strict and non-negotiable time constraints, regulators are able to ensure that any last-minute adjustments to complex settlement protocols, rate synchronization mechanisms, or international cross-border systems are implemented in the cleanest, most traceable, and systematic manner possible. This practice is particularly vital in the contemporary era, where digital settlement systems process transactions at nearly instantaneous speeds and thus require the most precise calibration imaginable to prevent catastrophic financial imbalances or operational failures across interconnected global platforms. For professional analysts and dedicated observers who meticulously follow these complex developments, the very existence of such a structured short-duration window is interpreted as a clear and potent signal of heightened coordination and extremely rapid-fire communication among the world's most powerful financial hubs. It must be accurately interpreted not as a trigger for consumer engagement, but rather as a profound reflection of the dramatically increased sophistication and stringent security requirements that are now foundational to modern global financial architecture. In its purest essence, this specific interval is seen as a high-level technical marker of ongoing systematic infrastructure alignment, one that serves to highlight the immense complexity, absolute precision, and global synchronization required to operate today's vast and interconnected monetary ecosystem, emphasizing the technical effort involved. Central banks worldwide have decisively entered an accelerated phase of modernization, a transformation primarily driven by the escalating demand for instantaneous financial transactions, the need for enhanced regulatory compliance mechanisms, and the urgent requirement for new digital infrastructure capable of seamlessly interfacing with emerging economic technologies. This phenomenon is observable from the financial centers of the Middle East and Asia to the established hubs of Europe and North America, representing a universal technological imperative. These extensive technological upgrades frequently involve the development of entirely new, high-speed cross-border settlement networks, the vast expansion of robust digital identity verification systems to combat financial crime, and the critical integration of distributed ledger technology (DLT)-inspired architectures into the pre-existing traditional banking frameworks. This is a foundational, non-negotiable step toward modern finance. Iraq's own sustained modernization efforts are a direct reflection of this worldwide structural shift. Over a number of years, the Central Bank of Iraq (CBI) has systematically introduced wide-ranging reforms specifically designed to significantly strengthen financial governance, improve its monitoring of domestic liquidity, and bring the country's operations into clear alignment with demanding international standards. These critical initiatives include comprehensive upgrades to Iraq's electronic payment systems, a deep integration with stringent anti-money laundering (AML) and counter-terrorist financing protocols, and a focused push to enhance transparency across both its public and private banking sectors. While the sheer scope of these efforts may appear dry and purely technical, collectively they represent a foundational leap forward for Iraq's overall economic posture and its vital credibility within the global marketplace, attracting essential foreign confidence. Economists globally recognize that this ongoing, deliberate modernization effort in Iraq mirrors a larger transformative process unfolding across numerous developing and resource-rich nations that are actively seeking to leverage state-of-the-art digital infrastructure to support long-term economic stability and attract substantial foreign direct investment. The strong, observable movement towards sophisticated asset-backed accounting models and highly efficient digital settlement systems is an integral part of a much broader, coordinated global endeavor. The fundamental goal of this effort is to ensure that the next epoch of global finance is securely built upon verifiable, transparent, and efficiently managed representations of national value. This principle ensures the system is robust. What global observers are tracking in this moment is ultimately not an isolated or unique Iraqi domestic development, but rather one critical chapter in a much grander systemic global shift toward a more interconnected, technologically fortified, and transparent financial landscape. One of the most compelling characteristics of the current environment is the extremely high degree of multinational coordination that is reportedly unfolding across numerous financial institutions, regulatory bodies, and the rapidly growing digital asset networks. The past decade has shown an unmistakable, steady progression toward harmonizing compliance standards across borders, meticulously validating national reserve structures, and actively constructing sophisticated systems that are capable of interfacing seamlessly across vast international boundaries, a necessity for modern commerce. In Asia, for instance, central banks have proactively implemented DLT-compatible digital ledger systems designed to dramatically improve the real-time tracking of liquidity and complex cross-border transactions. Concurrently, in the Middle East, financial authorities have been deploying advanced asset verification frameworks that are often explicitly tied to national energy and commodity reserves, anchoring value to real-world resources. In Europe and North America, monetary institutions have consistently adopted the most stringent transparency guidelines and have significantly accelerated the integration of instant high-speed settlement platforms, further demonstrating a global technological convergence. These collective developments clearly signal a substantial global shift away from opaque, purely fiat-based valuation models toward a more sophisticated hybrid structure that incorporates technologically enhanced asset-linked monetary ecosystems, ensuring greater accountability. It is crucial to emphasize that structural changes of this magnitude do not materialize in a single day, nor do they often align perfectly with the simplistic, often sensationalized narratives frequently circulated among speculative groups. Instead, they invariably emerge through the slow, disciplined process of deliberate international cooperation, meticulously executed multi-year planning cycles, and the measured, disciplined rollout of cutting-edge settlement technologies. The movement toward a more measurable and verifiable representation of value, particularly through asset-backed frameworks, reflects a growing, global demand for inherent stability, clear accountability, and universal cross-system compatibility. As more nations continue the vital work of integrating these sophisticated, interlocking systems, the entire global monetary order is slowly but surely transforming into one that places primary importance on transparency, interoperability, and long-term resilience. This period, which is frequently and perhaps overly romanticized in various investor communities, is in reality nothing more than a structured chapter within a much larger, highly coordinated, and long-term international evolution. This transformation is set to continue fundamentally shaping the future of global finance for several decades to come. For years, investors who maintain a careful, analytical approach to large-scale financial transformations have understood a fundamental truth. Truly meaningful global change almost never arrives with the loud fanfare or overwhelming suddenness that is often imagined within rumor-driven narratives. On the contrary, it unfolds through a quiet, painstaking series of technical steps: extensive system stress testing, intricate regulatory calibration, meticulous cross-border verification, and comprehensive policy harmonization among nations. In this fictionalized scenario, the purported activation of a new monetary transition phase represents the natural culmination of years of foundational groundwork that has systematically taken place far from the public eye. Investors who correctly focus their attention on genuine macroeconomic trends recognize instinctively that these structured phases do not simply emerge spontaneously. They are instead designed, tested, refined, and implemented with absolute meticulous precision to ensure that global financial markets remain profoundly stable throughout the entire process. Yet, even within this highly structured environment, seasoned analysts consistently caution against becoming overly consumed by unverified speculative expectations, especially those that promise instant, unrealistic wealth or an overnight financial transformation for individuals. They underscore that the ultimate and primary purpose of any substantive reform, real or imagined, is the long-term systemic stability of the entire global structure, not the generation of personal windfalls driven solely by unconfirmed rumor or emotionally charged conjecture. In this hypothetical world of financial transition, educators and strategic financial advisors consistently stress that transparency, patience, and absolute regulatory compliance are the non-negotiable, essential principles that allow participants to responsibly and successfully navigate any period of dramatic economic change. Those individuals who approach this complex process with a mindset of genuine intellectual curiosity and rigorous discipline, rather than being driven by financial urgency or unchecked emotional reaction, are invariably placed in the strongest possible position to accurately interpret and understand the subsequent developments. Knowledge, not unverified speculation, remains the only reliable and effective tool for interpreting major monetary developments, whether those developments are demonstrably real or merely part of a sophisticated hypothetical exercise designed for educational value and thoughtful discussion. Within this fictionalized global scenario, individuals who are closely tracking developments related to foreign currencies like the Iraqi Dinar are strongly encouraged to adopt a mindset that is deeply grounded in observation, prioritizing measured thought over reflexive haste. While community discussions frequently revolve around technical concepts like structured tiers, specific private exchange procedures, and time-sensitive operational windows, it is fundamentally important to remember, even in a hypothetical context, that legitimate monetary reform is always communicated exclusively through official, authoritative, and verifiable institutional channels. In the real world, recognized, credible institutions such as the Central Bank of Iraq, the International Monetary Fund, or the U.S. Treasury Department provide all necessary updates solely through their public press releases and universally verified platforms, ensuring maximum trust and accountability. Therefore, in this fictional rendering, both the characters within the storyline and the external observers are repeatedly reminded that any information originating solely from unofficial chat rooms or unverified social networks should be treated as pure speculation, rather than definitive evidence of fact. What carries far greater importance is the fundamental ability to analytically distinguish between information presented for entertainment or creative exploration and information that is genuinely authoritative and institutionally sanctioned. Maintaining this crucial balance and clarity of thought ensures that people are not dangerously swept up in compelling narratives that generate extreme urgency but completely lack any genuine institutional grounding. Just as major global financial systems move with caution, deliberation, and immense care, so too must observers pace their expectations and maintain a sober, balanced perspective. The explicit purpose of engaging with such a complex financial storyline is not to chase speculative promises of sudden wealth, but to learn and understand how immense large-scale economic frameworks actually operate, and precisely how they might evolve within a technologically integrated future. The three pillars of this imagined evolution are technology, transparency, and trust. In this hypothetical universe, the global financial system is in the middle of a rapid digital revolution that perfectly mirrors real-world technological trends, including the implementation of digital ledger technology, DLT, sophisticated blockchain-inspired architectures, and the modernization of cross-border settlement processes. These major innovations introduce unprecedented levels of systemic transparency, allowing every single transaction, final settlement, and subsequent audit trail to be verified with a reliability that was simply unattainable under older traditional systems, even in countries like Iraq. The vast expansion of this kind of digital infrastructure inherently and significantly strengthens institutional trust, drastically reduces potential opportunities for corruption or mismanagement, and measurably enhances overall investor confidence in the system's integrity. These advanced digital architectures now make it genuinely possible to more accurately align a currency's valuation with a nation's measurable economic productivity, verifiable resource output, and consistent trade performance. This linkage creates a far more stable and defensible foundation for incremental revaluations or systemic recalibrations, should a sovereign nation autonomously decide to embark on such a path of reform. While the fictional storyline amplifies these developments for maximum narrative effect, the fundamental underlying principle remains firmly grounded in sound economic theory. Sustainable monetary value must, in the long term, accurately reflect a nation's genuine, verifiable assets and its total economic output. These profound transitions are inherently long-term, methodical, and painstakingly built upon years of deliberate technological integration and policy reform. Whether in imaginative, fictional worlds or in the realm of actual economic policy, meaningful structural transformation is consistently a process of gradual, careful construction rather than a sudden, chaotic upheaval. Maintaining a grounded mindset amid this monumental change is key. Whenever fictional scenarios depict major, system-level financial shifts, one common side effect, which directly mirrors reality, is the rapid, often unchecked spread of misinformation and rumor. Social media platforms, informal rumor networks, and emotionally charged online communities can all too easily amplify speculative claims that diverge wildly from verified institutional fact, creating dangerous distortions in the market perception. This is precisely why observers and viewers of such speculative stories are always strongly encouraged to maintain a grounded, measured, and highly analytical approach. In both the context of this financial fiction and in the real-world pursuit of financial responsibility, the most prudent and responsible path involves rigorously consulting only licensed financial professionals, verifying all information directly from official, recognized banking authorities, and consistently resisting any narrative that prematurely promises guaranteed returns or the existence of privileged secret access. The imagined world of large-scale currency reform is admittedly rich with intrigue, powerful symbolism, and the promise of complex, international coordination, holding great narrative fascination. However, it must never be mistakenly interpreted as an instruction to make decisions that carry personal, unmitigated financial risk. Instead, this narrative serves as a potent reminder of the paramount importance of critical thinking during all times of significant economic change and transition. The more dramatic and sensational the economic storyline, the more absolutely essential it becomes to meticulously separate verified fact from unverified fiction and intellectual curiosity from actual, irreversible financial commitment. Grounded thinking is the transformative process that turns raw uncertainty into valuable, actionable insight, permitting individuals to appreciate the unfolding narrative and learn from it without becoming dangerously swept up into a wave of unrealistic, emotion-driven expectations. This entire fictional arc points to the creation of a bigger picture, a new global financial framework anchored in stability. In this fictional scenario, the world is portrayed as being actively engaged in the meticulous construction of an entirely new global financial framework, one explicitly designed to transcend the known limitations and rigidities of traditional systems and wholeheartedly embrace a future fundamentally centered on measurable value, ubiquitous transparency, and strengthened international cooperation. This evolving global structure is not about the isolated fortunes of any single currency or a single localized economic event. Rather, the narrative suggests it is the long-term product of many decades of accumulated reform efforts, major technological breakthroughs, and a decisive shift in global geopolitical and economic priorities toward collaboration over isolation. Within this imagined world, regional economic alliances are depicted as growing stronger, as participating nations increasingly recognize that long-term economic resilience depends significantly more on collaboration than on outright competition. New digital identity verification networks, sophisticated cross-border asset registries, and harmonized international compliance standards are presented as the crucial backbone of this emerging structure. These technical systems enable participating economies to interact with an unprecedented level of clarity, efficiency, and verifiable trust. The fictional emergence of synchronized monetary phases merely represents the procedural and architectural complexity underlying these massive global transitions, rather than serving as sensational triggers or secret, informal payout mechanisms. Furthermore, in this expanded, reformed universe, governments are choosing to deliberately anchor their national currencies to verifiable, tangible resources, such as energy output, strategic commodity reserves, or measured digital productivity metrics. This strategic move is designed to actively prevent the artificial suppression of a currency's genuine value and to promote far more equitable and balanced global trade practices. This profound systemic shift is depicted as not happening overnight, nor is it driven by obscure shadow groups or secretive financial tiers of unknown origin. Instead, it is presented as the natural and inevitable evolution of a global community that is actively seeking greater fairness, enduring accountability, and universally shared prosperity for its participants. The frequently referenced 36-hour coordination period, within the context of this particular fictional model, symbolizes nothing more complex than a scheduled technical testing interval, an infrastructure signaling period, and a systematic process of calibration within the much broader, coordinated movement toward digital-era monetary integration. This fictional storyline relentlessly emphasizes that all verified updates must come only from official sources. In this hypothetical environment, the act of distinguishing between information communicated through official, verified institutional channels and the unverified chatter that floods informal networks is presented as critically important. Fictional reforms, just like their real-world counterparts, must strictly adhere to processes firmly rooted in governance, law, and formal oversight. Within the boundaries of this specific storyline, national central banks, the relevant financial ministries, and established international regulatory organizations are portrayed as the sole authoritative sources for any official updates regarding significant currency changes, large-scale technological upgrades, or any major policy adjustments. The fictional Central Bank of Iraq, alongside its major global counterparts, is shown releasing all information strictly through its official channels, which include public press conferences, formally published circulars, regulatory bulletins, and sanctioned, verifiable media outlets. Anything that appears outside these carefully controlled channels, including any rumors of sudden, unannounced rate changes, secret, informal exchange locations, or completely unvetted redemption appointments, is explicitly portrayed as unverified and therefore entirely unrecognized within the narrative's world-building rules. This crucial distinction serves a dual, important purpose. It actively protects the characters and observers from making decisions based on unproven misinformation, and it powerfully reinforces the core principle that legitimate structural economic change is always transparent, accountable, and thoroughly documented. The fictional global framework depicted in this specific narrative is carefully structured to reward the virtues of patience and disciplined due diligence. It highlights the fact that true financial literacy is built on the deep understanding of how official institutions communicate, how complex regulatory protocols fundamentally function, and why genuinely credible information rarely, if ever, arrives through private social media groups or unvetted anonymous online communities. In this story, as in reality, discipline and extremely careful attention to detail remain the two essential, non-negotiable traits for anyone attempting to navigate a period of large-scale financial transformation with any degree of success or safety. This is a crucial time for patience and perspective. As this fictional world navigates the initial phases of its systemic financial transformation, many of the individuals within the storyline are portrayed as experiencing a complex, draining blend of high anticipation, weary nostalgia, and deep emotional fatigue. Years of waiting, focused research, and the constant envisioning of a future profoundly shaped by economic renewal have created an environment where even the smallest, most technical developments can trigger intense and disproportionate emotional reactions across the community. Yet, the narrative consistently demonstrates that genuine, sustainable transformation, whether it is technological, financial, or societal, always unfolds gradually and deliberately in a series of measured steps. The characters who ultimately thrive and succeed in this complex environment are those who fully grasp that progress is rarely, if ever, strictly linear. They recognize that significant institutional reforms require careful, collaborative drafting, extensive and rigorous system testing, and multi-layered, formal approval before they can be responsibly and safely implemented on a national or global scale. In this imagined universe, financial educators consistently remind their audiences that the fundamental heart of any revaluation or major recalibration process is structural fairness, not quick speculative profit for a few. These deep-seated reforms are designed to meticulously correct historical economic imbalances, modernize complex, outdated systems, and strategically create genuine opportunities for nations whose full economic potential has been historically hindered by prolonged conflict or limited, difficult access to robust global markets. Thus, the mindset of patience becomes far more than just a simple virtue. It evolves into a genuine strategic mindset. It empowers individuals to concentrate on the crucial elements of preparation rather than the impossible task of prediction, and to prioritize reasoned reflection rather than knee-jerk emotional reaction. The narrative strongly emphasizes the importance of gratitude, humility, and highly disciplined planning, portraying them as the essential emotional anchors required to safely and effectively navigate the inherent uncertainties of such large-scale change. By proactively embracing a wide, long-term perspective, the characters in this story ultimately discover that the deepest, most enduring value of this transition lies not merely in its potential final outcome, but in the profound wisdom and knowledge gained throughout the entire long and arduous journey. The focus of the road ahead is clearly on building a sustainable future. As the second phase of this fictional monetary evolution unfolds, the community's attention naturally shifts away from the feverish world of speculation and toward the higher value goals of education, structural understanding, and empowerment. Characters who once fixated on the possibility of rapid, outsized gains now find themselves intellectually drawn to the deeper, more complex mechanics of global financial reform, the functional operation of digital settlement systems, the necessity of compliance synchronization, the emergence of resource-based valuation models, and the growing intricate interconnectedness of international markets. The storyline clearly portrays a world where sustainable, long-term success depends not on finding secret privileged opportunities, but on informed, responsible engagement with transparent and officially sanctioned systems. The individuals who genuinely excel in this evolving environment are those who commit the necessary time to rigorously study the new regulatory frameworks, actively learn how digital ledger platforms technically operate, and deeply understand why institutional reforms must necessarily progress step by step rather than all at once. Whether they are currency holders, asset managers, or simply curious observers fascinated by global economics, they begin to recognize that the future belongs decisively to those who prioritize learning and disciplined analysis over the distracting emotional noise of speculation. The narrative consistently emphasizes that this profound transition is fundamentally about responsibility, how nations, institutions, and individuals utilize the powerful tools of transparency and technology to build long-term, verifiable stability. By consciously replacing the destructive impulse of speculation with solid education, and the pressure of urgency with measured, rational analysis, the world in this story strategically positions itself to thrive in a new financial era that is definitively defined by clarity, accountability, and shared global opportunity. This imagined future is depicted as one that fundamentally rewards curiosity, discipline, and absolute integrity above all else. serving as a constant reminder to every reader that meaningful, lasting evolution requires not only the construction of new systems, but also the cultivation of new, responsible mindsets. The current moment, described as a controlled historic transformation, is one where the fictional phrase Tier 4 Billion's activation has effectively captured the community's imagination, not because it guarantees instant, life-changing change, but because it powerfully symbolizes a highly sophisticated global transformation effort that is quietly taking place beneath the surface of everyday life. The narrative ultimately reveals that the talked-about 36-hour coordination period is not a secret payout window or a hidden redemption period for the few. Rather, it is a representation of the precision and absolute discipline that must govern modern economic architecture in an interconnected world. This interval illustrates precisely how major institutions stress-test complex systems, align multinational policies, and rigorously synchronize technological frameworks to ensure systemic stability during an era of rapid global change. One fictional analyst summarizes this entire moment by declaring that it marks not a single dramatic ending, but rather the genuine beginning of an era that will be profoundly defined by enhanced financial accountability, absolute digital integrity, and greater international coherence among nations. As the storyline continues to unfold, both the characters within the story and the external observers are consistently and strongly encouraged to maintain their clarity of thought, unwavering patience, and an absolute commitment to verified official information. The days and weeks ahead in this narrative promise further technical data, official institutional communication, and expanded insights into the continuously evolving financial system. Until then, the narrative concludes, the wisest and most responsible course of action for all participants is to remain calm, stay meticulously informed, and deeply respect the structured, careful process of global modernization that is currently underway. In this imagined world, the very future of finance is not presented as a sudden, cataclysmic arrival, but as a continuous, measured unfolding, one that is being progressively shaped by the forces of technology, the principle of transparency, and the collective shared responsibility of nations that are all striving toward the creation of a fairer, more stable global economy for the future.